pretty much gone, and it was hot again. Good morning, Cynthia. Good morning, all of you. So good to see you all this morning, this Wednesday, beautiful Wednesday morning. Lovely to have you all on this live with me. And this morning we are going to be looking at the Hebrew month of Shevat. So at sunset on Sunday evening, we crossed over into this new Hebrew month of Shevat. So we're just going to be having a look at what the prophetic significance of the Hebrew month of Shevat. So that's all very exciting. So good morning, everybody. Please like and share. I really appreciate all of you who are my digital evangelists and who like and share these messages, because you can't believe the people that they reach. Honestly, the people that message me, because they have somebody forwarded or did something with a message of mine. It's just amazing. The digital space is amazing. To use it for the purposes of God is just absolutely incredible. So please like and share. Please forward to people that you know would be interested. I find that these Hebrew videos on the different Hebrew months are often some of the most watched videos. So people definitely are interested in, or there is an awakening and an interest building to the Hebrew roots of our faith. Good morning, Jen. Lovely to see you, my friend. Okay, so also to all those of you, I can't be too distracted. So now, so when I'm on my phone, recording on my phone, I can't see the comments. They're too small. But now on my laptop, I can see the comments up the side. So it's lovely because I can see that you guys are engaging with me and engaging with each other. And I love that. But I just can't let myself get too distracted by it, because it's kind of, there. I keep wanting to look and see who's saying what. But please engage and please talk and please comment. And I love that. So don't stop doing those things. So so that is where I am. I have I need to show you this. My husband bought me. So I'm trying a bit of a health kick, and I'm trying because with menopause, one of the things that goes with menopause is weight gain. I have put on so much weight, ladies. It is a frightening experience. And I'm not on HRT or anything like that. I'm kind of trying a bit of a natural route, but at this point in time, I'm really considering HRT because I've had enough of it now. It's been 3 years and I've had enough of it now, and I'm so desperate to lose some weight. But I'm trying to be a little bit healthier as well. So I have this thing that I'm going to be drinking 2 liters of water a day because I'm very bad at drinking water. I literally exist on coffee. Like, the blood in my veins is probably 50% caffeine. I exist on coffee, so I'm trying to now drink 2 liters of water a day. So my husband, sweet man that he is, he bought me this bottle. So, and I think it's all probably mirrored on the camera, but it's a 2 liter bottle. And it starts with 7 a.m. rise and shine. And then every sort of 2 hours, it gives you a little word of encouragement, 3 p.m. halfway there, 5 p.m. you can do this, 9 p.m. all in a day's work. So here we go. So this is so. Also, it's quite nice because it has this. I don't know why I'm not selling these to you. I'm just showing it to you. It has this little thing, so it has a straw, so I can't spill the water all over my laptop like I did with the coffee. So there we go. Okay. So good morning, Debbie. Lovely to see you. Jen, I don't know, but I've never struggled with my weight like I am at the moment, and it's just an absolute shocker, really it is. So we are going to talk about the Hebrew month of Shevat this morning, but before we go into that, I just want to tell you, ladies, I think it was the last time I was live or the time before, I can't remember now, but my beautiful friend Jessie messaged me messaged on the live actually to ask me when my next ladies event was, and I messaged her back and said, whenever you organize one is fine, because I generally don't organize those things. I just don't have I generally just go where I'm invited. I don't do the organizational things myself. Good morning, Stu. Lovely to see you. So Jessie has organized a ladies event for all of those who are interested. On Sunday the 26th of February, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So for all of those ladies who are desperate to still go to church, you can still go to church. You can have a whole day of holiness and righteousness. Sunday the 26th of February at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the Anna Beulah Farm in Durbanville. And the entrance fee it's 140 Rand, which isn't much at all. It's 140 Rand, and for that you get tea, coffee, and a light lunch. Yeah, coffee and a light lunch. I thought fee said tea, but I'm sure you can have tea as well. So for 140 Rand, you get coffee and a light lunch, and then you get to spend the afternoon with moi. And so it is, the message and prophetic ministry will be by Sally Goodman. That is me. So Sunday the 26th of February, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you are all more than welcome. I'm going to post the invitation onto my Facebook page later today, and it will have Jessie's number for RSVPs. Please share if you can't make it because you're not in the area, but you have friends who you know would love to go to a ladies' event. Then please share it so that we can get ladies. We can get ladies. Jessie, thank you, Jen. Jessie has really worked hard to organize all of this, and so it would be lovely if we could get as many ladies there as possible. So that is Sunday the 26th, but I will put the invites up on all of my different platforms, and you can share it with whoever would be interested. Okay, that is that. And then at the end of March, I'm speaking at a women's conference at the CRC in Kraaifontein, I think. I think it's the last weekend in March, but I'll let you know. They still have to confirm the details. I'll let you know that closer to the time. Okay, so to begin this morning's teaching on the Hebrew month of Shevat, I want to read to you from Psalm number 1, and you will figure out why it's Psalm number 1 in a moment. So I'm going to read from Psalm chapter 1, Psalm number 1, from the Passion Translation. Okay? It is okay to read the Passion Translation, ladies. For those of you who aren't sure, because of all the bad press it has received, it is okay to read the Passion Translation. It is a beautiful translation. It just needs to not be the only translation you read. Good morning, Celeste. Lovely to see you, my friend. It needs to not be the only translation you read. Okay, so read other translations, read as many translations as you can, get a well-rounded view of scripture. There's no excuse for that anymore because you don't actually have to go out and buy a whole lot of different Bibles. It's all online. But the Passion Translation is a beautiful translation. Just don't read it in isolation. Read it with other things. So, but Psalm 1 in the Passion Translation it's titled The Tree of Life. And it says, what delight comes to those who follow God's ways. They won't walk in step with the wicked, morning Karen, nor share the sinner's way, nor be found sitting in the scorner's seat. Their pleasure and passion is remaining true to the word of I am, meditating day and night in his true revelation of light. They will be standing firm like a flourishing tree planted by God's design, deeply rooted by the brooks of bliss, bearing fruit in every season of their lives. They are never dry, never fainting, ever blessed, ever prosperous. But how different are the wicked! All they are is dust in the wind, driven away to destruction. The wicked will not endure the day of judgment, for God will not defend them. Nothing they do will succeed or endure for long, for they have no part with those who walk in truth. But how different it is for the righteous! The Lord embraces their paths as they move forward, while the way of the wicked leads only to doom. That is Psalm 1 in the Passion Translation. And even as I'm reading it, I'm thinking to myself, how often does it seem completely different to us? How often does it feel for us like the wicked prosper and good people just struggle and suffer and, go through all these trials and tribulations? And how often do we, sit on this earth and in whatever nation that we're from and are just like, when do the wicked get their day? When does that happen? Why does it feel like righteous men and women just struggle? But God knows, God sees the end. God sees the whole picture. God sees the beginning from the end. He's at the beginning, he's at the end, and he's at every step in between. And ultimately, that is exactly what will happen. The righteous will prosper and the wicked will not. So the reason why I'm reading Psalm 1 to you this morning is because the month that we're looking at, the Hebrew month that we're looking at this morning, is the month of Shevat. And it is a month where we get to plan to sustain generations. And it is also the month where we get to look at what we meditate on, what we put our minds on, what our eyes are fixed on, what our minds are fixed on, what our hearts fixed on, because what we meditate on is basically what we become. It's what we walk in. And I think I've shared with you, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Putso. I shared with you last time, or the couple of times before, when I was just speaking about our nation and our continent, and how I went through this stage of just feeling so hopeless because of everything that's going on, and how I had to rely on God to give me hope again. But then it also came down to God saying to me, what are you meditating on, Sally? Stop going on Twitter. For example, Twitter is a terrible place. It really it's just like there's so much interesting stuff on Twitter, but there's so much negativity and so much like outright hatred and just so much of that stuff, and so it's okay to know what's going on. We need to know what's going on in the world, but are we meditating on that? Is that what's filling our mind, our hearts, our eyes, or are we meditating on what God says, which even if it looks nothing like what God says, we live in the hope that what God says is what will come to pass if we co-labor with him and walk this journey with him and do what he has called us to do. So the Hebrew month of Shevat began at sunset on Sunday, the 22nd of January 2023, this Sunday just passed, and it runs until sunset on Tuesday, the 21st of February 2023. So that is the Hebrew month of Shevat. And as you know, if you have been following along with me through my Hebrew teaching, so for some of you, you might have heard, what I say about Shevat before, but it's always good to be reminded. And so that we look at the Hebrew months not because we are Jewish, not because we have to follow along with any different kind of law or anything like that. We look at them purely because there is a calling to be like the sons of Issachar, to know the times and the seasons of God and of Israel. And there is prophetic significance to the calendar that God actually put together for the Israelites back in the Old Testament. So the Hebrew month of Shevat is all the Hebrew months are associated with a tribe of Jacob, so a tribe of Israel, a son of Jacob, a tribe of Israel, and we look at their association with a letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and we look at their association with the constellations in the sky. Not astrology, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not preaching astrology or horoscopes, but we know and we understand that God put the stars in the sky. He created the constellations in a time where there was no technology, there were no watches, no clocks, no ways to tell anything, and the constellations were a way that ancient people knew what season they were in, what they were stepping into, etc., etc. So the constellations, Satan has corrupted things around the constellations. That's exactly what he always attempts to do. He corrupts and he counterfeits. He cannot create, he can only corrupt and counterfeit. And so if there's so many things that he has corrupted and counterfeited, and then the church as a man-made institution often says to us, no, we have to stay away from those things. But those things were God's first. they were God's first. So God is not scared of what Satan is doing with astrology and horoscopes and things. He knows that he put those constellations in the sky. Right back in Genesis 1, you can read that. And that was for his people. So we get to look at the prophetic significance of the constellation without looking to the constellations to run our lives or rule our lives or predict the future. We do not look to them to predict the future. So the month of Shevat is associated with the tribe of Asher. So Jacob's son, Asher, the tribe of Asher, and Asher means happy. It means pleasure, delicious, fatness. Just having a chuckle at me talking about putting on weight. It means fatness. So it's all of those things: pleasure, delicious, fatness, happy. That's what Asher means. There is also, as with most of these, things, there is a negative and a positive. So the positive is that Asher means happy and pleasure and delicious and fatness and fullness and all of those things. The negative is that there is a warning to beware the delicacies of the king. So Daniel, when Daniel was taken into exile with Nebuchadnezzar, and he was like, we don't want to eat the things that they eat, because a lot of it would have been food that had been sacrificed to idols, and he wanted to stick to the Jewish diet as God had told them to eat, and so they were healthier than anybody else because of that. And in there it says he wouldn't partake of the delicacies of the king. So it's a time of fatness and fullness and deliciousness, but beware the delicacies of the king. In other words, beware of how much of where the fatness and the fullness and the deliciousness of what you are receiving and what you are inputting, where that comes from. Let it not be food that has been sacrificed to idols. Obviously, I'm speaking figuratively now, but let it just, again, it's that reminder to just be conscious of what you're meditating on, where your heart is, where your mind is, where your eyes are, where your ears are, what you're allowing in, because so that you are not partaking of the delicacies of the king. It is the 11th month of the biblical calendar. So remember, we have a biblical calendar which goes according to the way the months worked within the Bible, within Scripture, and then we have a civil calendar, which is the calendar that came into being as Israel sort of became a nation and they needed to make things a little bit more concrete, and they adopted a civil calendar, which then is only next year. So we only change into 5784. No, not next year. I'm confused. We are in January, that's right. 5784, sort of September, October. This year we cross over into the new civil calendar, but Shevat is the 5th month of the civil calendar, but it is the 11th month of the biblical calendar. So we have one more month of the biblical calendar, and then we cross over into a new biblical year, not into a new civil year, so the number doesn't go up, but into a new biblical year. So within the year, the Jewish people actually have 4 different New Years for 4 different things, but only 2 of them are really recognized anymore. That is the biblical New Year and the civil New Year. But the month of Shevat contains a New Year that is still recognized but not celebrated on a large scale. And in Hebrew, in the Jewish people's mind, it is called the New Year for trees. So it is Tu B'Shevat, and it is the New Year for trees, and it is because Israel is going into spring, and so the blossoms of the almond trees, that is all celebrated. So it is a New Year for trees, and it's actually very, very interesting to just look at that's where that came from, the New Year for trees. And this is where it came from. It came from Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 23 to 25. This is what God said to the Israelites. When you come into the land, so he's giving them instructions for when they enter their promised land. When you come into the land and have planted all kinds of trees for food, then you shall count the fruit of them as inedible and forbidden to you for 3 years. It shall not be eaten. In the 4th year, all their fruit shall be holy for giving praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year, you may eat of the fruit of the trees, that their produce may enrich you. I am the Lord your God. So what God was saying to them was, he was saying, you're going to come into the land and you're going to plant all these kinds of trees. But when you plant a tree, it has to grow and it has to bear fruit. And often the first harvest or even the second or third harvest isn't, it takes time for the tree to mature and then bear fruit or whatever it is that the tree bears. That is amazing. And so God gives the Israelites these instructions. He's like, go into the land, plant trees. But for the first 3 years, you cannot eat the fruit from those trees. You need to give the trees time to mature, time to grow, time to bear the fruit that is actually worthy of being eaten. Then he says, in the 4th year, all the fruit must be holy for giving praise to the Lord. In other words, in the 4th year, whatever fruit came from those trees, they had to dedicate that unto the Lord. They had to give it to God. They couldn't partake of the fruit. They actually had to take that fruit and give it to God. Only in the 5th year did they actually get to partake of the fruit that those trees bore. And as I was reading, so this is the celebration. So what happened was, the Jewish people were like, okay, but how do we know? Like, if we're planting all these trees and we don't know, when I planted this one and when I planted that one, so I don't know like when their birthday is effectively. I don't know when it's been 1 year or 2 years, And so the rabbis got together, and what they did was they just decreed a birthday for trees, which is basically the new year for trees, it's on the 15th of Shevat, which is sunset on the 5th of February to sunset on the 6th of February. Sunday the 5th of February through to Monday, the end of Monday, the 6th of February, that is this new year for trees. And so basically what God said to them was, so what the rabbis decided was that they would declare a birthday for trees. So no matter when you planted the trees or how, on the 15th of Shevat, they were considered to be a year older. So that was their tree birthday. And so what they did was, it was like an agricultural festival that they celebrated. It wasn't something decreed by God. It wasn't something that is specifically written into scripture or anything like that. It's just something that the Jewish people put in place to help them obey what God had laid down. But as I was just meditating on that, I was thinking, along the lines of just how we need to meditate on what is good, and meditate on hope, and meditate on faith and righteousness and all of those things, but also how often, especially in our society of instant gratification, how often do we plant something or birth something or start something and we're like, okay, when is this happening? And it just reminded me of that whole thing of when you plant seeds. We plant seeds. We plant seeds in our children's lives. We plant seeds in the people around us lives. We plant seeds in our families' lives. We plant seeds wherever we go as laid down, surrendered lovers of Jesus. We are constantly investing in the things of God. We are constantly planting, and sometimes it feels like we're constantly birthing, and then sometimes it feels like we don't see the fullness of what we're doing. When will those seeds, bear fruit? When will the trees bear fruit? When will what we birth actually look like something? And I think we forget in this instant gratification life that we live, where everything is available to us at the touch of a button, that we forget that actually we need time, that things need time, they need time to grow. We forget that God isn't bound by our time. God isn't a slave to instant gratification. God isn't particularly perturbed by the fact that we expect things, we expect to push a button, and it's going to happen. He's not perturbed by the fact that we put a tree in the ground and we want to eat from the fruit immediately. That doesn't bother God. God is like, things happen in times and in seasons. That is the way it's always been. That is the way it's always been. And so sometimes I think that we rush things, and listen, I'm speaking for myself, we rush into things. We feel the urgency. There are often things that God plants inside of us, and we feel the urgency in the spirit. And because we feel the urgency in the spirit, we feel like it's something that is a now in the natural. We don't stop to say to the Lord, what does your timing look like for this? What does your timing look like for this? Is this your timing? So here God says to the Israelites, you plant the trees the first year, you don't eat from the fruit for 3 years. The 4th year, you give everything to me, and only the 5th year do you eat from the fruit. So for 5 years, basically, you don't partake of the fruit that what you planted has actually borne. And then you have to remember that the first fruit that is kind of edible and available is given to God. You don't even get to partake of that first fruit. The first fruit is God's. You give the first fruit to the Lord. You don't even get to take that. So I think it's so good for us to remember that there are things that God has planted and he's birthing, but he needs us to grow. For some of us, he has planted us in something or planted us somewhere, and we're like, Lord, I've been planted here for X amount of time and I don't see, things happening, and this has been prophesied over me and that has been prophesied over me, but I don't see the fullness of that. I don't see the fruit of that. And God is like, listen, I need you to mature a little bit. I need you to bear some fruit, and some of that fruit is going to be inedible for like a year or two, and then the first time that you get a really good harvest, that has to come to me, and then by the 5th harvest, and then you're going to start seeing and being able to partake of the fruit, and other people will be able to partake of the fruit in your life because it will be available. So I think it's just such a good reminder, and this month of Shevat is such a good time to remember that, because it is the month of Asher. So if you read the prophecies over Asher, so in Genesis 49, verse 20, this is when Jacob was prophesying, when he calls all his sons to him, because now he's dying and he wants to prophesy over all of his sons. And so he calls them all to him. And Asher, this is what he says over Asher. Asher's food supply shall be rich and fat, and he shall yield and deliver royal delights. This is what Jacob prophesies over Asher, okay? Asher's food supply shall be rich and fat, and he shall yield and deliver royal delights. Now, there's just such an abundance in that verse, isn't there? There's such a deliciousness and a fatness and a, yielding of royal delights. It's just this this feeling of abundant deliciousness. I love that. And then you go on to Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy chapter 23 is when Moses now is going to go and sleep with his fathers. And he now prophesies over all the tribes of Israel before they are going to enter into the promised land with Joshua. So he's now prophesying. And what he says this, of Asher, he said, blessed above sons is Asher. Let him be acceptable to his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. So blessed above sons is Asher. This is what Moses is prophesying. Let him be acceptable to his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. So this is all lovely. We have all this delicious fatness, fullness, all of this kind of thing. And then we have this thing about let him dip his foot in oil. Okay, so maybe that's just some kind of ancient, Israelite custom or whatever. We disregard it because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. Why would Asher be dipping his foot in oil? Or the tribe of Asher, why would they be dipping their foot in oil? But the land that was given to the tribe of Asher, the territory that was given to Asher when the Israelites moved into their promised land, the territory that was given to Asher, the map, if you look at a map of the territory that was given to Asher, it sometimes suggests the shape of the sole of a foot. The shape of a sole of a foot, or sometimes even that of a leg underfoot. So the territory that was given to Asher, if you look at a map of what it looked like then, it looks almost like the sole of a foot, or in some instances it can almost look like a leg underfoot. Now remember, so Jacob prophesies this over his son Asher. This is before the sons of Jacob have become the 12 tribes of Israel. Now we have Moses prophesying this over Asher before they go into the promised land, before Asher receives his land. The way the land was, they didn't have maps and things in those times the way we do today. So they gave portions of land, based on cities that were already there and tribes that already lived there and all of that. And so they would have had no way of knowing at the time that the land that Asher was going to get looked like a foot, or looked like the sole of a foot, or looked like a leg and a foot. Now listen to this. Listen to this. The Great International Iraq Petroleum Enterprise opened in 1935 and crossed the area just at the toe of Asher's foot. Oil brought nearly 1,000 miles across the sands from Mesopotamia began pouring through pipes into the Haifa harbor, 1 million gallons of oil a day. Jacob had prophesied about Asher, his bread shall be fat. And here Moses says of Asher, let him dip his foot in oil. In 1935, ladies, in 1935, this great international Iraq petroleum enterprise lays a pipeline that crosses across the toe of Asher's foot and brings to pass Moses' prophecy that Asher's foot would be dipped in oil. It brings to pass all the fullness and the fatness that was prophesied over Asher by both Jacob and Moses centuries before it actually came to pass. Centuries before it actually came to pass. This was prophesied, and in 1935, the prophecy in its literal form comes to pass when this pipeline of oil is laid in such a way that it crosses the toe of Asher's foot and therefore fulfills the prophecy that Asher's toe will be dipped in oil. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just God? I wonder if the tribe of Asher listened to those prophecies, and I'm sure that their land was fruitful and their trees were fruitful and all of that sort of thing. I'm sure that all of that, and they probably were like, yes, we have all of our fruit, and we have all of our land, and we have our trees, and we have food, and so we have fatness and we have deliciousness. They had no idea of the deliciousness that was coming. They have no idea when Moses said Asher will dip his foot in oil. You've got to wonder, what did they think about that? What did the tribe of Asher, were they like, wow, okay, what does that look like? Do we start washing our feet in oil or stepping into oil? Or, they must have wondered. And I'm sure that there were many interpretations amongst people who belonged to the tribe of Asher going forward. Or maybe they were just like, okay, it just means that we're going to be blessed and there's going to be an abundance, because oil represents anointing and oil represents blessing and oil represents abundance. So maybe they just took it to be symbolic or figurative. But the point is that actually what God told Moses was going to be a physical fact. A physical fact in 1935, a time in history when they couldn't have even conceived of when they received these prophecies. And this is what I'm saying, ladies. This is what I really feel like we need to just really take this in today. This thing of like, don't rush God. We are all impatient. Believe you me, there are dreams that God has laid on my heart. There are dreams that He has given me. There are things that have been prophesied over me. And I sit in this space where my husband and I are right now, in this kind of limbo space, not sure where we're going next, what's happening next. And all of those things kind of swirl around inside of me. And I'm almost like, you know what, Lord, I don't even want to go back and read those prophecies, because I just don't see how this is going to happen. I don't see what this is going to be. I have prophecies about my boys and how they will walk with God and how they will follow us in ministry and all of those things. And I look at them right now and I love them to absolute bits with all my heart and soul. But I look at some of the choices they're making in their lives, and I'm just like, I don't see how that is ever going to come to pass. I don't, Lord, and I say to the Lord, I want it to happen now, Jesus, I want it to happen now, and God is just unfazed by my rushing. He is just unfazed by that. He is not worried. He's not concerned. He's not saying, oh, wow, Sally, I sense that you are getting really, really kind of, anxious about all of this, so let me just speed up my time process and let this all happen just a whole lot faster. No, God is like, no, you know what, you have planted those 3 boys. They are like trees, and you have planted them, and they need to grow, and they need to mature, and their first 3 harvests might be completely inedible, and then the 4th harvest is going to be all mine, and by the 5th harvest, you know what, you will get to actually partake in some of the fruits of the harvest of the things that you have planted inside them, and just the fact that you have planted them and you have surrendered them to me. I have time. There is time for this. I am not rushing this process. This process is going to take some time, And so often I think we question the words that have been spoken over us. We question our destiny. We question our calling because we don't see it happening in the time frame that we expect it to happen. We don't see it happening the way we expect it to happen. We don't see it happening, we just like, and then sometimes opportunities present themselves and we were like, Jesus, this is a perfect opportunity to, my eldest son, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but the year that we moved, sold our house and moved that same year, and he had to move out, and he was 26 and it was time and all the rest of it. My husband reassures me of all of that. I still struggle. My mama's heart struggles. And he had to move out because we moved too far away from his work. And in that time that he moved out and we moved from the family home that the boys had shared for 10 years, with us, he got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which those of you who know anything about this sort of thing is often triggered by trauma. Do you know how I struggled with the fact that happened? That we were following God. God told us to move. We were being obedient to what God had spoken. And because of that, my son had to leave the house. And he then got diagnosed with this disease. Do you know how even now, speaking about it to you, ladies and gentlemen, my heart aches. It aches. And do you know how many times I have said to the Lord, Lord, if you healed him supernaturally, because they know Jesus. They gave their lives to Jesus when they were little. They pray when they need something. They reach out when they're desperate about something. They believe in God. They listen to our stories. But they're just not walking exactly the way that, I would love them to be walking with the Lord. And I say to God, if you healed him miraculously, if you supernaturally healed that child, he would so believe in you. Like he would so be sold out for you if he got his healing. And he said, they were here for dinner the other night, and I was talking about just how he's managing his diabetes, and he was like, but I'm going to be healed. And I think it was semi in jest, but there's an element of it that we have told him that we are believing for his healing, and there's an element of that he is believing for. And I'm like, Jesus, if you just healed him, he would so surrender himself to you. And God's just, you know what, Sally, there were many people that Jesus healed miraculously, and people who saw these miraculous healings and they still didn't believe he was the Son of God. For some people, that is not the way, and for whatever reason God decides to do this a different way, I need to accept that, and I need to believe that the seeds that I've planted in those boys, that they have been planted as oaks of righteousness, but it takes a long time for an acorn to actually become an oak tree of righteousness. I need to believe that those seeds will come, that they will bear fruit. And I need to trust in God's timing that they will bear fruit when God decrees and declares it to be his best timing. Not my best timing, not my instant gratification. I want to push the button and have 3 boys who are just like fully sold out for Jesus. No, that they need to grow and mature and develop and walk through stuff in their life so that when they decide that they are going to be fully sold out for Jesus, they are fully sold out for Jesus. Not because mom wants them to be, not because Flynn wants them to be, not because any of those things, but because they know that God is their God, and the only way they get to live their lives is with him and with him in them. And so sometimes, ladies, I think that is just so important for this month of Shevat, for us to just meditate on that. Meditate on the things, the places where you have planted seeds, the places where you have planted trees, the places where you are birthing or have birthed things, and where you are frustrated because it doesn't look yet like anything, and you do not have a harvest yet that you can partake from. And then look at that and say to the Lord Jesus, where am I in this cycle? Have the first 3 harvests happened yet? The inedible ones. Is this the harvest that I need to just give totally to you, dedicate completely to you? And then where is the harvest that I eventually get to partake of in this time? But at the same time, be mindful that you are meditating on things that feed you. The constellation over the month of Shevat is Aquarius, the water carrier. Aquarius, the water carrier. So you think of trees, you think of seeds, they all have to be watered, they all have to be watered by living water if you're looking at it spiritually. So Aquarius, the water carrier, it speaks of roots that awaken to the water of life. Roots that awaken to the water of life. So what are you meditating on? What are you allowing in so that to ensure that your roots are awakening to the water of life, to the living water? And can we pray for the seeds that we've planted, particularly in people, like for example our children? Let us pray that their roots awaken to the water of life, that their roots, the roots that have been placed deep inside of them by parents who have prayed for them and have dedicated them to God and have, witnessed and all of those things, that those roots awaken to the water of life. But take care of your own roots as well. Pray that your roots awaken to the water of life, and in that ensure that what you are focusing on and what you are meditating on is good and true and pure and righteous and all of those things, so that you can stand in hope and in faith. The letter of the Hebrew alphabet that is associated with the month of Asher is the letter Sadiq. Sadiq, that is the letter of the Hebrew alphabet that associates with the month of Asher, Sadiq, and it means that letter Sadiq means righteous one. It means righteous one. So it is a month to make righteousness your foundation. And if you're going to make righteousness your foundation, you need to be focusing and meditating on the things that inspire and encourage and bring righteousness into your life. So let's just rehash very quickly, summarize what I've said. The month of Asher: happy, pleasure, delicious, fatness, but beware of the delicacies of the king. Beware of where your deliciousness and your fatness and your happiness and your pleasure is coming from. It is the 11th month of the biblical calendar, the 5th month of the civil calendar. It is the month that righteousness becomes your foundation, because the Hebrew letter Sadiq symbolizes the righteous one. It is the month of Aquarius, the water carrier. Let our roots awaken to the water of life. Let our roots awaken to the water of life. It is the month of the new year for trees, when we get to remember that what we plant, whether we plant seeds, whether we plant trees, those things do not bear fruit immediately. And when they do bear fruit, that fruit might not be edible for a few cycles and seasons. And then when the fruit is edible, it then needs to be given as first fruits to God. And only then, after that tree or that seed has blossomed and borne fruit and gone through the inedible phase, and then has been given to God completely and surrendered to God, then we get to partake and receive of the fruits of things that we have laid down for Jesus, things that we have given over to God. It is a good month to read the book of Daniel. It is a good month to embark on a Daniel fast. For those of you who fast at the beginning of the year, it is a good month to do that, to cleanse yourself of all the overindulgence of the festive season, to get back into the swing of things in terms of work, in terms of spending time with God, in terms of kids that go back to school. It is a good time to fast and to cleanse ourselves and to re-establish ourselves. It's also a good time because it's the 11th month of the biblical calendar. So we also know that we are crossing over into a new biblical year shortly. And it's a good month to review or to sit with the Lord, talk about your children, be they biological children, be they foster, be they adopted, be they spiritual children, whatever that looks like to you. Speak to God about a plan to sustain generations. When God gave the Israelites those law, that ruling about the trees, God was looking to sustain generations. He was saying, these trees, you can't just take the fruit straight away. That fruit needs time to mature. It needs time to grow, and the trees need time to bear more fruit, because these trees are going to sustain generations. If you go to Israel, there are olive trees in Israel that are centuries old. They are centuries old. Those olive trees, they're protected. They are centuries old, and they still bear fruit. God's plan was to sustain generations. His plan is to sustain generations. The fruit that is born has to be fruit that will sustain generations. So if we do our instant gratification thing, we want it to happen now, and as soon as the fruit is born, we pick in the fruit and taking it for ourselves. How is that going to sustain generations? It isn't. It's going to sustain us right now, in the here and the now, but it doesn't sustain generations. And God's plan is always for legacy. It is always for generations. It is always for those who come after us. It is always, how is this going to go through the ages to bring about his eventual vision and future for the earth and for his people. So we need to, this is a month to sit with God and say, God, what is your plan to sustain generations through me? What am I birthing? What am I seeding? What am I planting that is going to be something that will sustain generations, not just for now, not just for the here and now, but for generations to come? What am I birthing, planting, seeding that is going to sustain generations to come? And how do I meditate on things that are good and true and pure, to make sure that that righteousness is my foundation, so that what I birth and I plant and I seed is a legacy that will sustain generations? Because a legacy that will sustain generations has to come from a righteous foundation. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this Hebrew month of Shevat, I encourage you, that is the prophetic significance of this particular month. God is outside of time. He's not bound by any calendar, be it Roman, be it Gregorian, be it Chinese, be it Hebrew. He's not bound by any calendar. He's outside of time, and he can do things when and if he chooses. Sovereignly, he can move sovereignly. We know that. I've preached for a couple of years now that this is a decade of convergence, where God's Kairos time and our Chronos time converge, and he moves sovereignly in instances in this very significant decade. But we need to bear in mind as well that God gives us prophetic keys and prophetic clues within the Hebrew calendar, where he's like, there is a prophetic significance to my times and my seasons, because whilst he is outside of time, he created the earth to function within times and seasons, and we need to remember that. So there is a prophetic significance for where we are right now, and we walk in those times and those seasons, and we pay attention as the sons of Issachar to knowing what the times and seasons of Israel are, what the times and seasons of God are, and what we are supposed to bring to bear within that space. So ladies, I trust this teaching has blessed you. I trust that this month of Shevat is going to be a month of happiness, of fatness, of deliciousness, of abundance for you. I trust that God is going to reveal a plan to you to sustain generations. I decree and declare that righteousness will be your foundation. I decree and declare that your roots will awaken to the water of life, and that the people that you are praying for and trusting for, who will come to Jesus, that their roots will begin to awaken to the waters of life. And I just trust for a blessed and incredible Shevat. Again, please share this video. Please, if you enjoyed it, like it, share it, get it out there. The Hebrew roots of the Christian faith are so important. The prophetic significance of this is so important. And then don't forget, the 26th of February, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Anna Beulah Farm in Durbanville. I will post the invitation on my page. You can contact Jessie to RSVP. 140 Rand gets you a light lunch and coffee, and you can come and meet with me. And there will be a message, and there will be some prophetic ministry. Okay, ladies, I love you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Can I just quickly say, I'm now going so over time, can I just quickly say, like, just a high five to those gentlemen like Stuart and my beautiful friend Putso, who come on here and they are not deterred by the fact that it is all women who watch, and they're not afraid to comment, and they're not afraid to say, like, I'm here and I'm listening. A virtual high five to you guys. Honestly, my heart just, you melt my heart when you guys come on. I so appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you for watching. Mwah. Love you so much, and I shall see you on Friday at 7 a.m. Love you. Bye.